Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Appreciate you for tuning in today. Let's get started. So today is pretty much going to start wrapping up our Super Bowl coverage, and we're going to start looking towards next year. But I felt it was only appropriate if I want to give Seattle all the credit in the world, because when you win a Super Bowl, it's an incredibly hard thing to do. And I don't think we spend enough time just going, hey, look at this incredible thing that they just accomplished. The Seattle Seahawks are a great team, no doubt. But Tony said something yesterday that made me even more intrigued on the potential of going back-to-back or potentially becoming a dynasty, which the dynasty stuff I don't want to really get into, but the back-to-back is more interesting. And that is, if we say Josh Allen is in his prime, Lamar Jackson is in his prime, Patrick Mahomes is in his prime, then we also have to acknowledge Sam DArnold is in his prime. He's a year younger than all of them, 2 years younger than Mahomes. He is 1,000% without a doubt. They have a franchise quarterback in his prime at the peak of his powers. And if it was anybody else, and we said, hey, your championship window, which we all love to talk about, how long is your championship window? How long is your championship window? And we always over-exaggerate it, right? We thought the Legion of Boom with Russ, that championship window was going to go on for years and years and years because of everybody's age. But it realistically, after those back-to-back Super Bowl trips, they never made it back to a Super Bowl. You know, Mahomes, it was like, oh, as long as he's just on the roster. Well, they're coming off a six-win season. So the window is never as open or as open as long as we want it to be. But the reality is, Sam Darnold's window, if he continues to play at this level, is open just as long as Josh Allen, just as long as Lamar Jackson, just as long as Patrick Mahomes. And that's why it is so incredibly important when you get an opportunity to win a Super Bowl, you got to go get one. Because now, and you're going to say, well, Sam's not the level of player that Allen, Lamar, Mahomes is. And yeah, that could be accurate. But the last 2 years, 14-plus wins, a Super Bowl trophy, is as good as 4,000-plus yards both seasons, 30-plus touchdowns. That's as good as any season, any two-season run. It's better than any two-season run Lamar or Allen have. They don't have a trophy. And it's almost as good, just about, as any season Mahomes has ever had. Any 2 seasons. And so now, if you're Allen and Lamar, and let's throw Joe Burrow in there, and now I guess we're starting the clock on Drake May. If you are in these situations, and it's like, when am I going to go get one? I now have to contend with Mahomes coming back. I've got to contend with the other great AFC quarterbacks. And now I have to contend with Sam Darnold in his prime and an all-time defense statistically, and we're getting into them in just a second. Again, dynasty is a touch too far. I understand that. But to go back-to-back, Sam playing this well, why is that not? I understand. I don't view them, and I said this yesterday, I don't view them quite as strongly or feel as strongly about them as I did the Eagles last year. Without the Eagles, that was potentially one of the greatest rosters in NFL history. But this defense isn't going anywhere. JSN is just getting, it's going to be tough to replicate what he did statistically this year, but he's not going anywhere. He's going to keep getting better. They've got cap space. Sam's on a great contract. And again, if these other great quarterbacks are all in their prime and we view their championship window as being open, we have to give Seattle that same credit and that same respect, that their championship window is just as open as the Bills, is just as open as the Chiefs, just as open as the Ravens. Again, this was not, I did not have this thought 24 hours ago. But when I talked to Tony, and I was just like, and he's like, yeah, man, Sam's in his prime. If we consider those other guys to be in their prime, and he's absolutely right. And you got a great GM, which is what we give for Philadelphia and Kansas City and Baltimore. Like, these teams that have had great GMs, really good drafts. They've nailed their last 4 drafts. Every draft since Russell Wilson trade has been A+. So he's got the draft. He's already got the dominant defense. He's already got good skill position players. They're going to keep adding to this roster, and he is in his athletic prime. Remember, he came in really, really young. So even though it took a long time to get here, this Seattle Seahawks team, the odds are going to say it's, right now a lot of odds makers are being funny because Mahomes coming back from an injury has them in a really precarious place with the Chiefs. The Chargers, again, are favored doing the AFC West, I think is ludicrous. Like, there's a bunch of funny stuff going on with the odds, and when it's way too early, you're always going to have that stuff. Obviously, we still have the draft, the offseason free agency, all this stuff to go on, but I think this Seahawks team has just as real a chance as anyone the last several years to go back-to-back. Obviously, the Chiefs did go back-to-back. So, this is a great Seattle team, and Sam Darnold is 1,000% in his prime and has a chance to make a great case towards, I'm not going to call him a Hall of Famer, but he's going to have these next couple of years to build a Hall of Fame adjacent resume. Moving on, there's been a lot of discussion about the Seattle Seahawks defense and how great is it, where does it rank all time. Tony called it a top 10 defense all time. I'm struggling with that right now. I think, and I've been very consistent about this, and I want to make sure that I put this in as much of writing as I can do possibly with a microphone. All-time great defenses to be in the conversation, you got to win a Super Bowl. So even though this year, you could argue Houston, you could argue Denver, you could argue Seattle, obviously, were the three best defenses in the sport statistically, the only one that's got a claim to being an all-timer is the Seattle defense. Houston's defense was amazing and statistically was even a touch better. They don't have an argument. Denver almost broke a sack record that stood since the mid-'80s Chicago Bears. They don't have an argument. This Seattle defense, you got to win a Super Bowl in order to be in this conversation. Now, I said yesterday, it's a little tough because I don't feel like they have that guy. They don't have Von Miller. They don't have Richard Sherman. They don't have Ray Lewis. They don't have Mike Singletary. Like, they're missing that iconic, legendary player at the heart of the defense that makes it tough for me to say, oh, this is for sure a top 10 defense ever. But when you really start to look at it and you go, okay, how great is this now dark side defense? Okay. I always kind of put the disclaimer on, I think the three greatest defenses of all time are, and dispute the order with somebody else, the 85 Bears, the 2000 Ravens, and the 75 Steel Curtain, right? And I kind of think they're untouchable. And that's because you just can't play defense that way anymore. You can't play football the way they played football. So you're never going to see somebody recreate what the 2000 Ravens did. You're never going to see anyone recreate what the Steel Curtain could do. You're never going to be able to see anyone recreate what the 85 Bears did with the 46 defense. So those are kind of untouchables in that top three slot. I then think you have a conversation when it comes to the next three defenses, in my opinion, are you could go 4 through 6. I'm not mad whichever order you got them at. I think you have to put the 0-2 Bucks in this conversation. I think you have to put the no-fly zone Broncos in this conversation. And you, without a doubt, have to put the Legion of Boom in this conversation. And again, this is where it feels like this defense comes up a little short. They don't have, again, Von Miller, a Derek Brooks, a Richard Sherman, these legendary all-time iconic players. Devin Witherspoon is great, and maybe he will get there one day. But at the time of winning, it didn't feel like it. And Von, you could argue, is maybe the least established at the time of getting that, but Von's Super Bowl performance was so iconic and so demonstrative that he elevated and catapulted himself into all-time iconic status off of that game alone. And so now it's up to, in my opinion, where are you going to put them? If we want to say they're top 10, in that 7 through 10-ish range, we now have to consider a team like the '08 Steelers, who only gave up 13.9 points per game. That's better than the Seattle defense did. Dick LeBeau, who I've given a lot of credit over the years of saying, what does Mike Tomlin's resume look like as far as the high-end aspects of it? Like, does he have a Super Bowl if he doesn't have Dick LeBeau as his defensive coordinator when he gets to Pittsburgh? And that's a conversation. So are they as good as the '08 Steelers? And that's tough. Are they as good as the 2012 Ravens? a team that Ray Lewis's final run, Ed Reed, Haloti Ngata, Terrell Suggs, multiple Hall of Famers, are they as good as that defense? Like, this is where you're going to end up with Seattle, where could they make an argument for top 10? They can, but it's going to be really tough for me when I'm going in that 7 through 10 range, because even that 08 Steelers defense, that 2012 Ravens defense, again, you've got multiple Hall of Famers, both sides, and Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, these iconic, legendary guys. Like, that's where it's going to get tough. And that's not even including it seeming like the late 80s 49ers. Ronnie Lott, that defense, the year they just absolutely dog-walked the Broncos 55-10 in the Super Bowl. Like, that's one of the greatest teams of all time, and their defense is a huge part of that. This is where it's going to be tough for that defense to make a claim. Now, where they will, and I'll close that on this, where they will absolutely have a chance, and what will be unique about them, there's realistically, and that whole, pretty much the Ravens had a great defense the whole time Ray Lewis was there. But that 2000s defense was iconic. The Steelers had a great defense pretty much the whole time this Dick LeBeau was there. But that 08 defense was special. What this defense has a chance to do is something that you can argue only the 70 Steelers and that Legion of Boom defense did, which is Legion of Boom defense led the NFL in points per game 4 times. The Steel Curtain was from 73 to 78, was untouchable. Now, salary cap and team-wise, it was all different again. That's a different football game. It's a different sport almost entirely. But those two teams had sustained periods of absolute dominant defense. The no-fly zone was basically built post-2013 when Denver had the highest scoring offense ever. They then pivoted, brought in Keep Talib, brought in TJ Ward. 2014, 2015, and 2016 they were still really good, but they weren't dominant. They were a one-year thing. And a lot of these defenses, that 2000 Ravens, one-year special, 02 Bucks, one-year special, 08 Steelers, the 2015 Broncos, like they were very, very good to elite, but they had 1 year that clearly stood out as, is this the greatest defense ever? And Seattle having a chance to put themselves up to the Legion of Boom, who did it 4 years in a row, or those Steelers teams from the 70s that you could argue damn near did it for a decade, but we'll give them the back half, 75 to 79. Like, that's where this team is going to be able to make its claim to fame. So, Seattle is, again, absolutely incredible. You got a quarterback in your prime. You got one of the best defenses we've ever seen. Seattle is going to be a handful. I'm not predicting dynasty, but they are going to be a handful. I mean, if you want to be a part of one of the coolest, most unique communities, don't forget to like and subscribe.